And welcome back to America's Forum. J.D. Hayworth, John Bogman, and Michelle Suskauer, our attorney, to talk about legal matters and legal items in the news. Earlier, Michelle, I got to pass along the news that I guess Bernie Madoff had five assistants now convicted. Now they are the five felons who joined their old boss. Give us your take on Madoff, his underlings, and what has transpired.
Well, as we know, Bernie Madoff pled guilty, and he's serving 150 years, so he's never going to see the light of day. And there were many, many people associated with Madoff who also pled guilty, but they pled guilty to cooperate so that they could get a reduction in their sentence. This is the first trial that has come out of this Madoff scandal. There were five individuals who worked with him who helped, according to the government, perpetrate the fraud. That was, I think, $20 billion fraud, at least. And so this was a 6-month trial. This was like a record-setting trial in New York federal court. And the argument by the defense was, we were victims too. We were duped. We lost money. We were kept in the dark. And Madoff's one of his former financial officers was the star witness, along with some other individuals who pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence by cooperating. And they said, look, they may have been, we did keep them somewhat in the dark, but they knew what was going on. They got millions of dollars of bonuses. Someone had a $2.5 million beach house. We had creative financial accounting. They knew exactly what was going on. And I think when you hear Madoff and the Madoff name in New York, it's going to be tough. It's a tough road anyway as a criminal defendant in federal court. In this case, oh, it's so tough.
Well, I'm listening to this, and of course, we know the outcome now, but I almost want to go back to the start. How on earth did they impanel a jury, given the notorious nature of just the name Bernie Madoff?
That's a good question.
And right there, the venue there in the financial center of the United States.
And just, you know, and picking a jury, voir dire, is very different in federal court than it is in state court. It's very, very limited, and I mean incredibly limited. But of course, everyone is entitled to a fair trial, and it's not whether or not they've heard of Bernie Madoff, because who hasn't, but it's whether or not they have prejudged these particular defendants. And so hopefully the court gave a little more leeway in terms of voir dire to make sure that these jurors were fair and impartial, because certainly the defendants deserved a fair and impartial jury. But that's what happened. It was an incredibly long case. They had dozens and dozens of exhibits, witnesses that were brought in, famous names of the victims, as well as Madoff and his family, and they came back guilty, all five.
And there was something like 33 counts for the defendants here, now convicts, and there's no question to what their involvement was here in this case. But Michelle, 33 counts. I mean, we know that this is not a situation where they maybe just turned their eyes and looked away from what Madoff was doing. They were complicit and highly involved in what Madoff was doing.
And that was the point. It wasn't, but what they said was these are folks that help make it happen, and without their assistance, they would not have been able to perpetrate this type of fraud on such a grand scale. And
it shatters the myth of Madoff being this Wizard of Oz type character up there in his office making these, you know, deals or whatever they may be by himself. It was a whole organization here that was involved in this scheme.
Absolutely. And when you have a lot of these Ponzi schemes, although you may have the head honcho, certainly you need other folks to help make this happen. And that's what the argument was. Again, almost everyone associated with this scheme, so many people already pled guilty. These were five who did not.
And it leads to this question, Michelle, since you're a defense attorney, and since there were so many counts and so much legal star power and energy and resources devoted to this case, do you expect these five defendants, or at least some of them, to try to appeal?
I think they absolutely could appeal, especially because what they would argue is the main witness really was buttressing their defense, saying, yeah, we did keep them in the dark. They certainly can appeal because they're facing significant prison time. But again, you know, it's a very tough road to hoe, especially in federal court.
Now, with federal investigators, a lot of times they go straight for the head of the snake with these types of Ponzi schemes. They're more interested in getting the person who was in charge of it
Right.
than some of the underlings. But do you think that changes now with a case like this? Obviously, it was so big, the federal prosecutors felt like they had to go after Madoff's assistants. But is there lessons learned? Is this going to change the way these Ponzi schemes are tried in the future?
I don't know. I don't know if I mean, this is sort of the way that it's done in federal court. I mean, you want to get, usually it's the first one in the door gets the best deal. And so his chief financial officer is really one of the first in the door. And so although, you know, he's serving prison time, he really is the one who was giving all of the information. You want to, when there's a multi-co-defendant case, you want to run in and deal with the federal prosecutors as quickly as possible.
It almost seems counterintuitive to hear as quickly as possible in the legal process that involves so much deliberation, right?
Right.
Shifting our focus now, because
Yes.
it is as intriguing as the Madoff case is. There is a case now growing internationally, and it has to do with the Malaysia jetliner 370. We hear today the Malaysian or the airline has offered a stipend to the families, just a very small amount of money, I guess the equivalent of maybe $4,000 to $5,000, to have families travel to the site.
Right.
Where they seem to be taking preemptive action, I don't know so much under grounds of legality or necessity as much as human decency in the wake of something like this. This crosses so many different, well, it would be transnational, international boundaries. What do you think we're going to see emerge from this case in terms of litigation?
Well, you know, you have what's called the Montreal Convention, and what that does is when you have victims of airline tragedies, there's compensation per individual, also for loss of property, loss of cargo, that falls under that convention. So in terms of an initial amount, it certainly is significantly more. It's well over $100,000. And Malaysia is one of the signatories in that convention. Not every country, but most countries. But again, they did not. There's assumptions that it's intentional. Who knows if Boeing could potentially be a defendant? So there's going to be litigation, and it is going to be transnational.
Yeah, the family's obviously looking for some sort of, you know, anything that comes as a result of this. A lot of them are looking for some sort of financial help as they try to stay in Malaysia and get the details, but more to come here obviously on this, and way too soon to determine how this is going to play out legally and financially. More to come here on America's Forum. Thank you so much, Michelle Suskauer, for being with us. Reach out to us. Our social media contact info up on the screen right now. We'll be back here with more on America's Forum.